Good afternoon, scholars. It's Friday. You made it. A couple of you earned this weekend's break. Some of you have been taking the break a little bit early, which I'm not going to spend too much time harping on because I really want to focus my lessons going forward. We only got a few left, and I really want to focus them on you scholars who are really diving into these stories, and you're developing your minds, you're developing your writing and your reading skills. So let's look at some of the scholars that really dove into yesterday's reading. Yesterday's reading was called Valediction by Sherman Alexie, and it was about two friends, Pete and John, who had been stealing soda for a number of weeks together until one day Pete says, "Hey, I'm not doing it. Like, it's wrong and we're going to get caught." John says, basically, he calls him a wuss, and he goes off and he does it, gets caught. He gets in a whole lot of trouble. And when Pete was given the chance to say, "Hey, I was involved too," he didn't. So you were posed with the question, who's the antagonist in this story and who's the protagonist? So let's look at some of your responses. On team, the two captains for Team Pete are Mirage and Israel. And let's just jump straight to their analysis. Mirage summarizes what happened with the soda they were stealing, and then how John got caught when he didn't listen that one time that Pete said, "I'm done." Mirage said, "This proves that the protagonist is Pete and the antagonist is John, because Pete eventually turned around and did the right thing, but John didn't. And after getting caught and punished, he still did bad things afterwards, which proves my point." Israel says, same thing. He summarizes how Pete said, "Hey man, we got to stop." John didn't stop. He said, "This shows that Pete has a goal of doing good in school and in football and wants to succeed, but John wants Pete to only chase his desire, not his goals, which could have ruined Pete's goals and could have had him in trouble. Therefore, if Pete decided to go rob too, John would have joined in too, for John chases only his desires. But since Pete knew it was wrong, he knew that doing the wrong thing could only ruin his chances of reaching his dream." So those are our arguments for Team Pete. Our captains for Team John are Alexandra and Elvia. Skipping straight to Alexandra's analysis, she says, "This evidence proves that he had the chance to tell the truth, but he still chose not to, which means he's not as responsible and mature as John." Elvia, oh my bad, that's Alexandra's twice. One second. Okay, should work. There we go. Elvia, in her response, she includes her analysis in throughout. She's inserting her opinions throughout, and that's good writing. And we're going to practice a little bit of that today. She says, "I think the protagonist is John, the antagonist is Pete, because yes, even though John still continued stealing, he had Pete's back and didn't betray him like Pete did. John and Pete were basically best friends, and I think John depended on Pete on coming forward so he wouldn't have to go through the punishment alone when they both had the idea and they both took the same actions. I think the goal in this was to face their consequences for what they did, and John believed in that, or else he would have denied what he was doing. But Pete didn't, so he never had the courage to say what he did. Even if Pete did feel guilty, he clearly didn't feel enough guilt, or he would have done the right thing, which was to face the punishment together." Yeah, and it's Alexander makes a point up here is that John could have told them, because they know that this wasn't the first time, and John could have said, Pete's done it with me every time, and he didn't. Um, so I don't know. There's no simple answer in this. It's like, what would you want a good friend to do? If John's a good friend, would he not want Pete to get in trouble because he knows that he is the one that got caught? Or um, is Pete being, I don't know, Pete's kind of looking out for himself, but is it wrong to look out after himself when he told John not to do it that last time? It's tricky. This is a complex. There's no clear right answer on this one. So thank you, Elvia and Alexandra, for leading Team John, and Mirage and Israel for leading Team Pete. And let's get into today's reading. We're shifting reading. This is still this reading was from a Native American writer. Now we're going to look at a piece of writing from a Mexican American writer named Santa Cisneros. She doesn't insert herself as a character. No, just like Sherman Alexie does. All of his writings are based on people he knows or his experiences, but he doesn't always put himself in the story. So this is a story called 11 by Santa Cisneros, and this is kind of about the complexities of getting older. What does it mean when you turn a year older? What does that mean for you and who you are and who you have been? So it deals with that a little bit, but then also there's this really awkward interaction that she has, a really tough situation she has with a teacher. And we're going to examine the teacher and kind of determine how is the teacher characterized, what's her personality. And then we're going to do the same thing for the main character, Rachel. And we're going to practice a new skill today, which is called embedding evidence, that I'm going to walk you through that, okay? So first, I'm just going to read through this story because if I'm going to walk you through this skill, I want to make sure that we've read this together. I'm not going to stop for the multiple choice on the side, so you need to go back and highlight your answers for those whenever you're confident that you've got the right answer. All right, so here we go. 11 by Santa Cisneros. Just to preview the last two questions, I'm gonna give away my answer here. Jeez. I'm going to really focus on how Miss Price is characterized and show you how to embed evidence. I want you to really focus on how was Rachel characterized. Characterized, scholars, means how does their personality come through their thoughts, through their words, through their actions, and even through the descriptions of what they look like. What kind of person are they? The author's not going to flat out say it. This isn't a kindergarten book where they say, like, Rachel was nice. The authors don't do that in the more advanced books that we're reading. The author describes what they're doing, what they're thinking, what they look like, how they interact with others, and we determine what what the character's personality is like, what their character is like. That's why it's called characterized. All right, so here we go. 11 by Santa Cisneros. What they don't understand about birthdays and what they never tell you is that when you're 11, oh, it's her 11th birthday, by the way, guys. When you're 11, you're also 10 and 9 and 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And when you wake up on your 11th birthday, you expect to feel 11, but you don't. You open your eyes and everything's just like yesterday, only it's today. And you don't feel 11 at all. You still feel like you're 10. And you are, underneath the year that makes you 11. Like some days, you might say something stupid, and that's the part of you that's still 10. And maybe some days, you might need to sit on your mama's lap because you're scared, and that's the part of you that's 5. And maybe one day, when you're all grown up, maybe you will need to cry, like if you're 3. And that's okay. That's what I tell mama when she's sad and she needs to cry. Maybe she's feeling 3. You should be able to go back and answer number 1. focus on the parts that I just read. Oh, actually, not yet. Maybe the way you grow old is kind of like an onion, or like the rings inside of a tree trunk, or like my little wooden dolls that fit one inside the other, each year inside the next one. That's how being that's how being 11 years old is. You don't feel 11, not right away. It takes a few days, weeks even, sometimes even months before you say 11 when they ask you. I do this all the time, except I do it in reverse. I always start to feel like I'm the year older months before my actual birthday. And you don't feel smart 11 until you're almost 12. I'm going to read that paragraph again, guys. It wasn't smooth and I interrupted it with talking. You don't feel 11, not right away. It takes a few days, weeks even, sometimes even months before you say 11 when they ask you. And you don't feel smart 11, not until you're almost 12. That's the way it is. Only today, I didn't have 11 years rattling inside me like pennies in a tin Band-Aid box. Today, I wish I was 102 instead of 11. Because if I was 102, I'd have known what to say when Mrs. Price put the red sweater on my desk. I would have known how to tell her it wasn't mine instead of just sitting there with that look on my face and nothing coming out of my mouth. Whose is this? Mrs. Price says. She holds the red sweater up in the air for all the class to see. Whose? It's been sitting in the coat room for a month. Not mine, says everybody. Not me. It has to belong to somebody, Mrs. Price keeps saying, but nobody can remember. It's an ugly red sweater. It's an ugly sweater with red plastic buttons and a collar and sleeves all stretched out like you could use it for a jump rope. It's maybe 1,000 years old, and even if it belonged to me, I wouldn't say so. Maybe because I'm skinny. Maybe because she doesn't like me. That stupid Sylvia Saldivar says, I think it belongs to Rachel. An ugly sweater like that, raggedy and old. But Mrs. Price believes her. Mrs. Price takes the sweater and puts it right on my desk. But when I open my mouth, nothing comes out. That's not, I don't, you're not mine. I finally say in a little voice that was maybe me when I was 4. Of course it's yours, Mrs. Price says. I remember you wearing it once. Because she's older and a teacher, she's right, and I'm not. Now, I cut the story off there. We're going to finish the rest on Monday, but we have enough. We have enough to work with. Okay, so answer number 2. Go back and answer number 2 when you can. Let's get into our skill. Our skill is called embedding evidence. Embedding evidence is using evidence in a different way than we've been practicing all year. Rather than find like that one golden quote that's a sentence or 2 or sometimes 3 sentences long that we're going to put right in our paragraph, when we embed evidence, we really explain our own thinking and we just drop in a couple keywords and phrases from the story right within our own sentences in quotations to show that they're evidence. So it's kind of I think some of you will really like it. Some people really like the organized way of doing things where you make your assertion, you give your context, you give your evidence, you do your analysis. This is another way to analyze keywords and to drop your evidence into your analysis and your own thinking. All right. So here are the steps. Step 1, and I'm going to go. Let me show you these steps before we go. Step 1. I'm going to go back into the reading and I'm going to highlight just certain words or certain phrases that stick out to me and that are going to help me answer the question. The question is, how is Mrs. Price characterized? So these can be key descriptions, they can be keywords that she says. So, whose is this? That kind of jumped out to me because it's kind of demanding. This jumped out to me even more. Whose? It's been sitting in the classroom. It's been sitting in the coat room for a month. This one stuck out to me because she says who's again. Like she's really demanding, and it's been sitting in the coat room for a month. It shows what her thinking is. She's not like, oh, someone might be cold because they don't have their sweater, or I don't want anyone to get in trouble at home because you lost your sweater. It's she didn't like it that it had been sitting in the coat room for a while. That stuck out to me. So let's keep looking. What other words stuck out? I don't see any like key descriptions of Mrs. Price. Um, so this line too. Of course, it's yours. So all of my key evidence, all of the things that stuck out to me from Mrs. Price are what she said, because there was no, we don't know what she looks like. There was no like descriptions of her or any actions. The main things, the way that the authors is introducing us to Miss Price is through her words. So I highlighted the words that stuck out to me the most. Step two is just type up your response. Don't worry about organizing it around a certain piece of evidence. Just answer the question as you would answer it in conversation, or if you were like raising your hand in class or doing a turn and talk. How is Mrs. Price characterized? I gave you some options here. Would you say impatient, direct, which means just honest, and doesn't really hold back, concerned, or inconsiderate? I'm going to say inconsiderate. And so now I just answer the question and explain my thinking. Mrs. Price, Rachel's teacher, seems inconsiderate. I'm still going to give context like I would, because just in any piece of writing, you should kind of explain what's going on in the scene before you dive into your thoughts about it. At this point of the story, Mrs. Price is demanding to know whose sweater has been left in the coat room. First, no one responds, and one of Rachel's classmates says it belongs to Rachel. Rather than ask Rachel if this is true, Mrs. Price just drops the sweater, which is ugly. Oh, sorry. Which is, what's going on here? Which is ugly and used. Actually, I can just say drops the ugly used sweater onto her desk, ignoring Rachel's faint protest. So how does that show she's inconsiderate? Just like yesterday, remember I said if you want to prove your point, pretend the opposite happened, right? When we were writing about Pete and John, if you want to prove that Pete is not a good friend, what would a good friend do? If you wanted to prove that John was irresponsible, what would a responsible person do? If I'm trying to prove that Mrs. Price is inconsiderate, then one way I can do that in my analysis is to talk about what a considerate person would do, right? If Mrs. Price were considerate, she would have handled this situation differently. First of all, she would have known it was Rachel's birthday and given her a little special treatment. She seems to be unaware. Second, she would have asked Rachel if sweater was hers and actually listened to Rachel's response. Instead, now I got to bring it home, bring it back to what she did. Instead, she ignores Rachel, even saying she's wrong about sweater belonging to her. Here's my answer in my own words. I'm still talking about stuff. I still give context. I've still talked about the story itself. You could still see that I did analysis, but I didn't center it around one specific quote. We got one more step to do to embed evidence. The third step is to go back, install the highlighted evidence into your own context and descriptions of what happened. So remember, one thing that I highlighted was whose. It's been sitting in the courtroom for a month. Well, I talked about that a little bit down here when I said, at this point in the story, Mrs. Price is demanding to know whose sweater has been left in the courtroom. My words were kind of similar to the words from the story. So why don't I just use the words from the story and just quote them right into my own sentence? Let's try it. Copy. At this point in the story is demanding to know whose. Doesn't quite, no, it's not going to quite work. I'm going to have to change some stuff. I'm going to have to add some sentences and add some words to make it flow, because this doesn't flow yet. Okay. At this point in the story, Mrs. Price is demanding to know oh, how about this? Whose is this? So I could say, at this point in the story, Mrs. Price is holding up a used sweater, demanding to know whose is this? That flows, right? I just worked it right in like it's my own writing. At this point in the story, Mrs. Price is holding up a used sweater, demanding to know whose is this? At first, no one responds, but then one of Rachel's classmates says it belongs to Rachel. Rather than ask Rachel if this is true, Mrs. Price just drops the ugly U sweater onto her desk, ignoring Rachel's faint protest. So I want to use this quote. Of course it's yours. I remember you wearing it once. Rachel says the sweater is I could do this one, not mine. Okay, guys. Is quote not mine, but Mrs. Price dismisses her. Of course it's yours. Of course it's yours. I remember you wearing it once. Boom. So that's different, right? These are the things, the words I pulled straight from the text and just fit them into my own writing. You don't have to keep them highlighted if you don't in your own writing. You can if it helps you to kind of organize, but you'll notice that I have a couple different quotes, but I just fit them in to my descriptions and my explanation of what happened. That's how you embed evidence, okay? So you pick smaller pieces and you just fit them into your own writing. You don't have to pick one quote and then after the quote say, this shows that, or this, you don't do it like that. You just write about what happened and then you're thinking on it and you just fit a couple keywords and key phrases into your own writing, all right? I know this was a bit of a longer video today, but this is a new skill, and so I wanted to model it for you. Now's your chance to try it on your own. Very similar question. How is Rachel characterized? Embed at least 2 pieces of evidence in your response. Your options are polite, shy, weak, or thoughtful. Okay? So just answer this question on your own. Follow these steps. Answer go back into the story, highlight any keywords that she says or any just key phrases that kind of show you about what show you who she is and what she's like, and then fully answer the question with no quotes. Just fully answer the question with what your thought is, some context about what you need to give context about, and then your analysis of what makes you think that about Rachel. Then go back in and pull the highlighted bits of evidence that you want and fit them into your own writing. You're going to have to change your words around like I did to make it flow, but you can do it, okay? Practice this. You got all weekend to try this out, and this is an advanced skill, guys. This is something that I didn't work on doing until towards the end of high school, but I know that you can do it. My teacher should have pushed me to do it sooner, and they didn't. You guys have teachers who push you to be the very, very, very best. So I want to encourage you to step up to that, to meet that challenge, because that's what you want for yourself too. But it takes discipline. It takes trying and failing and then getting some feedback and then trying again until you get good at something. Okay. So try this. Try embedding some evidence and just give it your best effort. All right. I will see you guys Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay engaged. Do your best work on this. All right. See you guys.